Hi. I think that we have a technical problem.
Okay.
And the link that, oh, no, I guess not. Weird. Okay, great. I take it back. Everything's fine.
Okay.
Oh, Terry, Sam, glad to see you in here. Having some technical difficulties, but
Hello.
appears to be fine now. Sure what happened.
Okay.
We are recording already. Began automatically.
All righty. I will call the meeting to order. I'll note that Sam Bruder is here and I am here, Terry Berthelot. I do not see Charlie Osberger at this time. Is there anybody for public comment? Okay. Sam, did you get a chance to look at the minutes?
I have, and I can make a motion to approve.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. We have no interviews today and no old business, which brings us to the proposed revised Mansfield Advocates for Children charge. How should we do this? Should we sort of start with a sort of discussion of the changes that you'd like to make?
Sure. I mean, really whatever easiest for you guys. So kind of the history behind it is when I started at the town, my position was actually almost all grant funded. So Mansfield Advocates for Children kind of formed from many different grants that all kind of pulled together and created this position. By the time I had started, we really only worked with the school readiness grant. The other ones had the Graustein grant, which was the other big one, had went away. So what my main focus has always been is school readiness. And then I also assist with the oversight of the child daycare grant, but that is separate from what MAC is. So when I had started, and Sarah Ann and I can definitely attest to this, we had banged our head many times on the wall because there really was no clear paper trail of a true charge for MAC and who should be on it. We have bylaws that did state like a quick slate of who should be on it, but there was no actual charge. So we did work on creating one so that we could have, a rolling roster of people and swear them in and actually have members of our committee, but we've never actually had this piece of paper that you see before you today that says who should be on our committee and why. So the OEC earlier this year just updated who they would like on the School Readiness Council. So I just took that language and added it to what we already kind of had, which we had most of the positions already, representatives from our childcare centers, parents, we had all of that. But this just expanded on it to have a few more community member spots allocated. So that's really just kind of where we are. So they updated that in February of this year, the OEC did. So we kind of MAC started towards the end of February, March, and then we voted on it in April on these changes.
Okay, terrific. All right, so I have let's see. I have, and Sam has, to the Connecticut Administered State Funded Program General Policy C-01, which list out all of these membership folks that need to be on here. And it's a lot.
It is a lot, and I'm really happy to report that they're all full.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, Mac's one of those really cool things that it's a group that formed so long ago that so many of the members stay on, and then we just can kind of recruit new parents. And then I really lucked out when they added this local jobs or employment business, like a person who helps people find jobs. Where's that one? It's like a weird one.
Yeah, I saw it on here and I thought that's unusual.
A workforce or job training. So a
Yeah.
lot of this, the language from the OEC is geared towards these priority districts, which have much, much larger amounts of centers, and they're providing hundreds of these spaces. Mansfield has 25. So we're smaller, and yes, everybody was struggling to find this, but we were one of the first towns to get that position filled because Kathleen Kreider, who actually used to work in our office, who now works for Access Agency, was like, sure, I'll hop on. So it was great. So yes, all of those are full, which is pretty cool.
So one question I have, is the language indicating that it's the town manager who fills these positions?
Yep. So that was actually at the suggestion of my director. In the years past, the Human Services Advisory Board and the Youth Services Advisory Board, which are all human service advisory boards to town council, have transitioned to a town manager appointment. So she just figured to have all three of the committees that are umbrellaed under our director of our, like, our whole department, there we go, that was weird, to have the same process for appointing members. So a lot of this,
tell me how it really works. So Ryan obviously doesn't know all these people. So are you finding the folks and then?
no, so up until this year, the people that were on there were people that had served on it since I started. So we've always had the same daycare center directors. We've always worked with Yukon Community Outreach. We've always had the children's librarian who was the same person. And then the parents would ebb and flow, but I would say it was like the 3-year term limit. Up until this year, when we had this influx of me needing to add these positions, that did go through you guys. So you have interviewed people who were recommended to be on the committee. So those people went through the process the way that it should. They filled out the online application and they were interviewed by you.
So I'm not happy with the system as it is today for most of the committees. I think it's really wonky, and folks end up in limbo for a very long time, and there are too many steps that don't really mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm intrigued by this. But I'm not so sure that sort of putting all of them in Ryan's hand makes sense either.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been thinking about is putting the onus either on the chair of each of the committees to not to advertise, to recruit, and then to nominate to the committee on committees. This particular route leaves the committee on committees and the town council entirely out.
Mm-hmm. I know Wyndham, their school readiness council has a very similar way to what you just mentioned. So what they do is any new members would attend, and then their chair recommends them to be on the committee.
Yeah, I just would like to voice my support of it being a process that goes through the committee on committees so that the town council could have a say in it as well.
And it was always that way. And like, that was one of the things that was changed in the wording. And I personally have no problem changing it back.
And Sam, I'm actually thinking I would like to get off the step of going through town council if possible, because I just see that as a meaningless step that postpones. But that I sort of think it coming through at least the committee on committees as and that that we could be charged with the official appointment, but the actual original interview going through the particular committee itself, either the chair of the committee or the chair of the committee and the person like Sarah who's staffing the committee. Thoughts on,
I hear what you're saying. That's gonna, I think, expand the committee on committees authority. I don't know if it's a charter based because it's part of the town council. And I know that for the most part, every recommendation we made has been upheld. But I don't know if I want to cut out the town council from being able to have a say if they happen to know somebody or know something that maybe we didn't know, or
yeah, but it's all
Appreciate-
public information ahead of time. So, I mean, they could weigh in.
yeah. But but then could
And
they?
somebody can
could
be
we-
unappointed as well, if there's some sort of background that makes them inappropriate for a particular committee.
But could that argument also be made for each committee?
I'm sorry?
Could that argument of the committee on committees being the one that's going to be actually putting these people on the committees instead of it going through the town council, that could happen for each committee then, right?
I would like to see that happen, just so that the process is more streamlined. I mean, I don't think it's within our power to make that decision, but if the rest of the town council would agree to that,
Yeah,
it would be.
so I would. Go ahead, sorry.
I just, it's just, it shouldn't be a several month process to get appointed to a committee.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm on board. I think I'd have less of a hesitation if the town council gave us that directive or ability for each committee. Not that we would have to do it for each one, but I wouldn't necessarily want to start having like one committee that has it this way, and then the rest of them have to go through the town council. You know what I mean?
Yeah, though it looks like that's been sort of happening already. That there are already committees that are going just through the town manager. And I don't see the rhyme and the reason to that.
Right, and that's I think why we're going through these charges to kind of, figure that part out of it.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I think this would be a good way to bring it up as to make the change in this one, and have that discussion when we bring this charge for revision to the town council.
I think actually, I think I might do it the other. I think it might make more sense to do it the other way. And this before we bring the change to them, put it on the agenda to have this conversation,
Perfect.
and then make the changes to the various charges.
Great.
But
I like
but Sarah, but I guess are you wedded to the town manager appointment in any way?
No. So when I had initially said that I wanted to make these changes, I was literally given the latest draft of the change to, I think it was the Human Services Advisory Board. And I just copied a lot of that format, and that's where that actual leave-in language came from. So
I'm only making a funny face because is that what it says, Sarah Ann? Did we have the town managers appointing folks to that? Can't hear you.
Sorry. I'm going to look it up while we're sitting here, and I will come back to you in just a moment. May I interject one thing? It was my interpretation in reading the pertinent section of the statutes that it spelled out who's supposed to be the appointing authority. Now, I'm not an expert in legalese, of course, but it seems to me that 10-16R says is the chief elected official of the town and the superintendent of schools that shall jointly appoint.
So
So
then
I'm
it would
actually,
be, then it would be the mayor. And that's an odd pairing.
They do, it's, so again, this language goes back to the fact that it's for these very large districts. In a lot of larger districts, the school readiness funding goes to their public schools. So therefore, their superintendent needs to sign off that they're going to take it. So on all of my documentation, I do get Kelly Lyman's signature, but none of our funding goes to the public schools. But it is required the way that the OEC writes their paperwork.
Well, it says that they will, it says that that they will convene such council. It doesn't say that they're necessary. Oh, it says jointly appoint and convene. That's the language you're looking at, right, Sarah Ann?
yes,
But the mayor can designate that responsibility to the committee on committees.
so I just reviewed the Human Services Advisory Committee new charge. And the new charge does say members are appointed by the town council. And I think
Oh.
that
Okay.
that might be, that, I think that's a change, Sarah, from. It might be, it's possible that it's a change
Okay.
from what it used to be. I don't recall what the old one was, but it is now clearly a council appointment.
So it looks like it needs to be the mayor.
Where you're finding that on this OEC document? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first page in italics, the chief elected official of the town.
Okay, okay.
It says, or in the case of a regional school district. We don't have a regional school district for the for the kids who get this.
No.
So it doesn't have to be the chief elected officials of the towns and the school districts, but it does say and the superintendent. So it's actually supposed to be a joint appointment from the mayor and Kelly or whoever is going to replace Kelly.
That's such strange wording.
So it would make sense this to have the nomination come from you all do you think the nomination should come from the chair of the committee or from the staff of the committee? Probably the chair of the committee.
I would think the chair.
Who's your chair now?
Denise Kegler.
So probably what we need the language to reflect is that the chair of the committee will make a recommendation to the mayor and the superintendent,
Okay.
and then they will make the appointment. Does that make sense? Is that everybody else is reading?
Terry, would you want that to be after COC interview or you're skipping COC?
I don't think there's a COC interview. I don't think it would be relevant because I don't think we have a place here because it's so specifically laid out here that that would mean we'd be just adding a layer of nothingness there, I think.
I agree. And the statute doesn't point to that.
Unless, Sarah Ann, you can think of a sort of in-house, we got to do it that way.
I don't think we have to. It's really going to be up to whether or not the mayor feels more comfortable having had at least a portion of the council having an opportunity to interview or that. But I think that's, to your point, that's the mayor's decision.
And there's nothing to stop the mayor from having it be on the agenda for a discussion before she makes her recommendation. wouldn't necessarily be an interview, but at least then she, right now, she could feel like the other council members at least got input before she decided.
So if I'm rereading it and I'm looking at the commas and I'm trying to understand exactly what this is saying. So it's saying the chief elected official of the town, or in the case of a regional school district,
So you can cross out that part because it doesn't
can-
apply.
we could cross off that part, the chief elected officials of the town and the superintendent. So is
Yes.
that saying that the chief elected official only if we don't have a
No,
regional school district? Okay.
It's an and. It's the chief elected official and the superintendent of
And,
schools
okay.
shall jointly appoint. So we want language in the charge that reflects that.
Okay.
And Sam, to your point about, or maybe it was Sarah Ann's point about, the mayor would want people interviewed. My thinking is that the committee itself will have done the important interview before they make a recommendation to the mayor and the superintendent. And to be honest, I think they have a real better sense of what they need and who's going to really bring something meaningful to the table than I do.
I agree with that. I just was saying that if our mayor, the current mayor, wants to have input from other town council members, it can be added as an agenda item first before she signs off on it, type deal. Not that she needs to. I don't think we need to write that into the charge. But if we get through this charge and that's one of the concerns she has, then I think that's a workaround that doesn't need to be codified.
All right, that works for me. All righty. All right, my next big picture thing was that there's so much language in terms of policies and protocols in this document, this C-01 document. I'm assuming, Sarah, you're in compliance with it all. I'm wondering if we should, in the charge, reference back to it to say that that the structure, the bylaws and decision-making, the role of the SRC liaison, like reference that that's all will be done in compliance with this document. Does that make sense?
Yes, because up at the top where I put as required by the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood School Readiness Grant Program, that's where I would include and reference this document, because essentially that's where we're getting this information from.
Right. And it's more than just like the composition, it's a whole bunch of other stuff here.
Yep. So I could just put what's at the top of that document for the school readiness council membership responsibilities and the role of the liaison.
Yeah, I probably do it like I break it out like they've broken it out.
Okay.
And something along the lines consistent with the Office of Early Childhood General Policy, GPC-01, and probably I'd put the date on it too, February 2022. So knowing that this might change, and then that we all should know which one we're in compliance with. And then we need to update this. If this changes again in a couple of years, then we'd have to update the charge, but that's appropriate. I'm wondering, just the first sentence, purpose charge. MAC is an early childhood collaborative invested in the well-being of children and their families in Mansfield. I'm wondering if promoting might be a better word than invested. Unless there's a good, I mean, there may be a really good reason for invested. But
Yeah, most of that language I copied from what has always been used, like on the Mansfield Advocates for Children websites, and anything that's always been kind of how they described MAC. I copied that stuff word for word. So again, I'm not attached to any of the wording. It was just kind of keeping it as it was.
does promoting seem to capture it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we do.
Okay.
I would just add maybe a comma after collaborative. If you agree.
Question I had also in this paragraph was the evaluating the effectiveness of school readiness programs. Is that something you do?
Yeah, yep. So whenever they write their RFPs, we actually as a council have to go over them and score them and vote on whether we agree that they're effective programs or not to just keep receiving school readiness funding.
And effectiveness means
Adhering to the state guidelines. So part of my job also is I monitor the centers on a quarterly basis. So we go over those monitoring visits as a council. And I'm going to knock on a big piece of wood right now, because luckily in Mansfield, we don't have a lot of problems where it's ever had to reach beyond just going over what has occurred at these monitoring visits. But again, like I can speak for other towns, I'm on some of their councils, and they do get where they have to actually like pull funding from other centers. So that's where that comes in.
is it actually their effectiveness that's being measured, or their compliance with various?
It's so the way that the OEC words it again is they have these 11 quality components. So you're actually comparing whether these centers are adhering to and meeting these quality components. So it's like the effectiveness of their center to include and incorporate these 11 quality components.
Just the only reason I'm asking, because as it reads to me, as somebody who's not like in it, I would read it to me like what you were measuring was whether or not the kids came out ready for kindergarten. And it seems like it's actually bigger. It's different than that, that it's more, that it's other things as well.
Right. That's definitely a huge part of it. That's one of the 11 quality components is the transition to kindergarten.
So I'm wondering if we could find some language that captured it more holistically, what you're doing there. It's more than just effectiveness. It seems like it's a level of compliance. It's with the various things they need to be in compliance with.
Well, I mean, it also goes back to the compliance of the OEC's guidelines and recommendations. I mean, that's essentially this entire council is built around what the OEC is asking us to do.
And that seems like the really important, from what you just said, that seems like
Right.
What's happening there is that's what you're measuring.
Right.
So some language that better captures that. And in terms of identifying resources available to children and families, do we publish that information?
Yeah, so lately I've definitely been making a bigger move for that. So anything that we find, like we just had someone come and talk about homelessness and gave us a bunch of resources for homelessness. All of that got distributed to the center directors and got put up online. And all of that information is a live link now on the Mansfield Advocates for Children page. So in pretty much anything, that was just the most recent example that I can think of, but the
So the next, after the comma, you say facilitating the delivery of those services.
Yep.
it seems more like it's not so much that you're not helping like solve homelessness, but you're helping people know
Educate.
that yeah, so it seems like that rather than facilitating the delivery, capturing more that it's about educating.
Disseminating information and education.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, disseminating the information. That's exactly what you're doing. And encouraging public participation.
Mhm.
Sam, anything else?
No, I had some questions about the positions themselves, but that was before I read the statute, and but I looked at the proposed charge first, and of course I always get concerned of pigeonholing us too finely into need somebody of this characteristic or this job classification, but I mean it's in the statute, so
Yeah.
I'm glad to see. Yeah, I'm glad to see that we have that all line up already. So at least that's taken care of. But
Yeah, this has been a long-standing, really functioning committee for a very long time. I was on
Yeah.
it many years ago, and it was big then.
It was big,
Yeah.
right? We've definitely fizzled, and we're hoping, I mean, with a lot of building it back up, we want to start doing more of this advocacy work. That's really kind of what a lot of the members want to work towards. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
So speaking of the advocacy piece, one other thing I would like to add would be an annual report. We did this with the Human Services Committee to make sure that the town council stays in touch with what you're doing and knows what you're doing. And we could even specify what works best. Sort of, you have a sense of the cycle of the group, like what month of the year would make sense. We could write it right into here and then get it on the agenda every year for the town council.
Okay.
So that we stay in touch and maybe realize when things need to be changed. Or my hope for all the committees is that they feel empowered to be advocates and to tell us what needs to change in terms of funding and stuff. And so having that sort of annual opportunity to come and say, this is working, this isn't working,
Mhm. Yeah, I can honestly say right now, it would be June. Because the grant starts right in February and then we hand that in May. So from February to May, our meetings are just going over figures and spaces and RFPs and stuff. So the June report would really be able to kind of zip up everything that we've done for the whole year.
June would be awesome. Also in terms of the timing of the town council, because budget season is over.
Is over, right? Hallelujah.
All righty.
Cool. So what I will do is kind of do a redraft of this draft. And then what would be easiest, kind of have you guys look at it first before I bring it back to Mac?
Probably best to send it to Sarah Ann and then have her send it to us.
Okay.
And then we'll meet again. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you so much for all your work. And I know that on the committee, on committees, we got lucky because of your advertising for MAC, that other people just realized that there were other committees that they could join. And that was really terrific. We had a whole bunch of people that, just learned about the opportunities just through you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I heard someone asked me today, how do you get so many parents? And I was like, I don't know. I just know a lot of them. And I'm like, hey, let's do this.
Yes.
So that's great. I'm happy. And I say people to that all the time, if you're going to live in this town and talk about our government, be a part of it. Be a part of it.
Yeah, it's everything. It's how democracy flourishes.
Yep.
But also the key that also you said is knowing people and asking people. I think people are much more likely to get involved and care if you go to them in sort of a personal relationship rather than a sort of you know, anybody who wants to can join this. It doesn't make it as special as when somebody comes and say, hey, you know, you could add a lot to our committee.
I like it. It was definitely a learning curve for me, but here we go. We're getting it done.
You are indeed. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome,
so
you guys.
we'll hear from you and
Yeah.
then we'll meet again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Sam, I had the exact same worry when I saw the shalls. I was like, oh,
Yeah, I was like, business community person. I'm like, I don't know, but I see it in the statute.
yep, yep. All righty, so the next thing is the language around the invite for the committee. So I'm wondering if maybe we should pause making major changes to this until after we talk
Oh.
about whether we could well, no, maybe not. All right. So, my thinking is that I would like more specificity in it. And Saran, you'll have to help me in terms of like what could be done and what's just impossible in terms of staff time. But rather than saying, you know, if you're receiving this email, you invited to interview, starting out with a sentence more like you've expressed an interest in serving on a particular committee, whatever that committee would be. So rather than it being a generic, and I don't know at this point, sort of like what, you know, how automatic all of this is and it, you know, how difficult it would be to make it less form lettery and more specific to a person.
We can make it specific.
That wouldn't be too much work.
It will not be too much work. We'll figure it out.
All right. I think the next piece of information would be that whether there's currently an opening on that committee. So current, like now, sometimes people are applying for things and then they come in front of us and
I don't send anyone this invitation if there's no opening. So if there's no opening, then I contact them directly and say, I received your application for XYZ. There's no opening on this particular committee. There are, however, openings on this, and this. If that's something you might be interested in, let me know.
good. Okay. So this is where,
I think what you're thinking, I think what you were going to say is sometimes it's listed on the agenda that someone is interviewing for a place. So I have let them know ahead of time that there's no space on certain ones, but I don't want to censor in your packet which ones that they've expressed an interest in. I feel like they're interested. It's not a secret. But they ought to be. I mean, they've conversed with me, so by the time they reach your committee, they're aware that there's no openings on the ones there's no openings on, right? So, and that they're only interviewing for a specific one or two.
The next thing, so where I would like to get to, and we might be too early to get there, would be then a statement along the lines of your information will be sent to somebody who is the chair of that committee. But before we go there, it seems like we need to meet with all the chairs of the committees to make sure that they understand. But rather than just having people invited to go to the meeting, even though it's a public meeting and everybody should be able to go, that the first person they are interacting with would be the chair of that particular committee. And then that person would invite them to the meeting, tell them when it was, and then after that, the person would come in front of the committees.
Mhm. Do you see, would you like to see committee on committees moving towards a requirement that interested volunteer have the nomination of the chair in all cases?
I would, I mean, I would like a process where if they didn't get nominated, they could appeal it. They could come, and come to the committee on committees, because I could see it become, I don't think this will really happen, but it's possible that you could get an old, we'll call it an old gals network, where they don't want a new person and or they don't want new ideas. So that's the worry about doing this, but in the same breath, it just seemed like it would be much more meaningful if they got involved, if they actually knew who their chair was and knew something about the committee before they got appointed to it.
Great. I wonder if our next, after TAC, Sam, can I mute you?
Sorry, am I not?
No, you're not muted. Sorry. There you go. Okay. I wonder if after TAC, we should look at the COC's non-existent charge and make one. Because a lot of what you're saying, it is important enough to be, to be written somewhere, and that could absolutely be part of a COC charge. This is the process.
Let's do that. And let's do that before we go too far down the line of making radical changes to how you're doing business now. But yeah, let's do that. And to include sort of thinking through having what the role of the chairs of the committees will be, and also having the conversation with the town council, redoing our charge, and having
Yeah,
a
that can
appeal
go,
process.
that can go together.
Yeah. So let's do
So,
that.
I like that a lot.
Okay, great. Good. TAC is a Transportation Advisory Committee is planning on coming to your next meeting with their proposed revised charge. I don't necessarily think that it's too early for that. I think they really do need some updates. You could probably at least get the ball rolling with them. Unless you want to put them off maybe 1 month, because Sarah's coming back next month with her revised one. It might be too many at once, but I mean, there's no reason why all this can't kind of happen and sort of overlapped. I don't know. How are you feeling about the spacing out? What do you, with TAC coming?
My sense of Sarah is she's so organized and on top of things that we'll be pretty close to just saying, yeah, this is the way to go, and won't have to spend so much time on it next time.
Great.
So maybe we could do both. What do you think, Sam? Or do you think that's too much?
No, I don't think it'll be too much. Even if we were doing both of these, it just will depend on how many interviews we have too. I mean, tonight makes it a lot easier, but I'm very much in favor of us reviewing each charge and hesitate to push any off.
And we
No,
could
especially-
always not, and unless there's an emergency, we could just not have interviews next time. Like just do these two things, and put off the interviews to the following, unless there's something really crucial that needs to get attended to. Would that be okay?
I'm on board.
Okay. Good.
So in terms of language right now, in terms of the invitation, let's hold off on the changes. And then once we have a clearer sense of what our role is going to be, then we'll be able to write in, the chair will be contacting you. And even maybe put in their appeal rights right into whatever we decide they are, right into the document, right into their letter. All right. That's it. We ready to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you both so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.